Welcome to tonight's session, Educating the Next Generation, Cannabis in Nursing Curriculum. The conversation feels especially important because we no longer are asking if nurses need cannabis education. We're asking how quickly we can close the gap. Every day, nurses are caring for patients who use cannabis, cannabinoid therapies, and other integrative approaches, often without formal education from nursing school. That reality is changing because of the work of passionate leaders who are continued to advocate, educate, and push the profession forward. Tonight, we are honored to hear from two incredible nurse leaders, Dr. Deanna Sommers and Llewellyn Smith, who have both played important roles in advancing cannabis nursing education and professional recognition. This conversation is about curriculum, but it's also about preparing nurses to meet patients where they are, to practice safely, to think critically, and lead healthcare into the future. So let's lean in, stay curious, and imagine together what nursing education can become. Welcome, Dr. Deanna and Llewellyn. Let's just kick off this conversation. We've got a great group of people here in the room with us today. We would like to pick your brains, ladies, and just ask, when you look back at where cannabis nursing education started, compared to where we are today, what progress feels the most meaningful to you?
I was going to save this for last in my order of discussion, but I think it's where we went and where we're going. I think it's the best way to start. And one of the things that is, I would say, our most recent, where we're going to go in the future, and it will carry all of us cannabis nurses forward, is we are honored. Myself and Llewellyn, a couple other board members, we decided to put together a couple of proposals, and I'm going to just kind of share the background because I'm not sure if everybody knows the background of how this transpired or evolved. But the American Nursing Association a couple months ago put a call out for a policy, like proposals for policy and policy changes. So I decided, if you don't put it out there and ask, you see what we're going to get, right? So Janice Putnam, one of the board members, put together a proposal regarding compassionate care, the policy, and a policy. And I put together a policy on advancing cannabis nursing competencies in our nursing curriculum and education in academic institutions and in hospitals, like in the hospital setting. And I'm so excited to say that both of our proposals got accepted. And And so what they did was they wanted us to combine our proposal. It's going to be exciting for all of us. The proposal, I'll read it too because it's kind of lengthy. So we will be presenting integrating cannabis nursing competencies through education and policy to advance patient safety and compassionate care in practice. And what that means is that we will be going in June to Washington, D.C. to the American Nursing Association's Organizational Membership Assembly. We will have, I just got hot off the press, we will have 10 minutes to speak to about 4,000 nurses and giving our rationale on why we should move this forward. That's one of the things that where education, I don't say we're making strides of having awareness and having education. So my plug, just to share a little bit short about that, what did I request? They wanted some actionable items. So my couple actionable items were to have cannabis nursing education in academics and in hospitals and in policy development. But that's our big. We're going to start off super strong.
And that's huge. I mean, this is such a big deal. Thank you for doing this work and sharing with us where things are headed. Very, very exciting. So, Llewellyn, what has been exciting for you in seeing this progression from where cannabis nursing education was to where we're going?
Well, of course, Heather, you know how far back it goes. You're farther than me, but it really started with the scope and standards, basically, and then ANA, the American Nurses Association, recognizing cannabis nursing as a specialty. So like you said, it's already here. Nurses are already seeing patients coming in the emergency room saying that they're consuming for whatever. So the American Nurses Association has recognized this and provided us a lot of support. What I really want to emphasize here is the importance of the work that we're doing. We have a dedicated membership, and sometimes membership doesn't really understand what they're getting for their value. And for ANA, first of all, to recognize us, and then second of all, to select our proposals. There were 47 proposals presented for policy change for the ANA membership, and we were one of 2 selected. And our policy is on integrating education and nursing curriculum as well as professional development. It's also includes compassionate care, Heather, which actually we utilized a lot of resources from Ryan's Law to get that accepted. So thank you for your work there and this organization's work. It really is all coming together, but I want everybody to know how important this policy change is for 5 million nurses. I know not everybody's a member of ANA, but really I hope that you would consider being a member of ANA, because honestly, if we can't collaborate with them, there's not going to be any movement forward. And we have a very small window of opportunity for this collaboration. I hope that the membership votes for it to pass. And if it does, then ANA will support us in having this enter into curriculum. And I also hope that I know that they will support compassionate care acts. But their endorsement really signifies a change in policy, and they have the platform to provide the education to nurses that none of us have.
It's huge. I mean, this is such a big deal. I mean, we're crossing our fingers, our toes, our legs, everything that the membership, that the committees vote for this. It's a big deal that out of, what did you say, 48 proposals, that you're one of 2 that got selected. I mean, congratulations on that. You're doing the work for all of us, and we acknowledge that and appreciate that so much. Coming back to just the education pieces, we were talking beforehand and I said, are there nurses that don't know about cannabis? So my question to you, and also Dr. Deanna, you're an educator, you teach students. So what do you think surprises nurses the most when they first begin learning about the endocannabinoid system and cannabis medicine?
Well, Lou and I can go back and forth on the discussion. For me, I teach a variety of courses in the undergraduate program in the Florida area. And whatever class that I teach, I integrate, somehow I have I call it a fun fact or something about cannabis. But let's even start with the endocannabinoid system, because they don't even know about that. And like before we jumped on the call, I mean, even some family members, that I find that, I don't want to say shocking, but not knowing the endocannabinoid system, not knowing CBD, THC, all of these things that we're discussing, in that I think, like Lou said, I mean, I'm pretty new in cannabis and in ACNA, and I mean 2019. But all I'm just saying is that just having these conversations, we need to continue having conversations with nursing students, nurses, more senior nurses. The more conversation that we have, eliminating the stigma. If you go on the American Nursing Association's website, they have a marijuana policy, and the ethics committee, the ethics advisory board had asked myself, Llewellyn landed up participating as well, Renessa, one of our board members, participated, and they wanted us, cannabis nurses of color, some of the members were there, and American First Access participated. The bottom line is they wanted our input in revising their policy. But here's what I wanted to share to circle back regarding your question. The people that were on the advisory committee, they also needed education. One of the questions that they had talked about was if a patient was consuming cannabis, would we call the police? And I was just very surprised at that. My thought process was a little bit down, my critical thinking was going down a different avenue to first understand, what is the state? Is it recreational? Is it medicinal? Anyways, I'm going to take a pause because I know at Llewellyn, she participated on that with me, and maybe she could elaborate a little bit more on that.
Now we have the ANA calling us, asking us for our opinion. And, they did ask us some really weird questions. But one of the other most significant questions, I think, was, does cannabis belong in the class of psychedelics? Everyone there shook their head no. Not that it's not a psychedelic in a matter of way. I think that we do need to keep the two separate for the time being. And so it was very interesting that the whole panel shook their head no when that question was asked without even consulting with each other. So I'm very pleased that they're now calling us for our advice. They will write the policy, but the fact that they called us just really gives us credibility with our knowledge.
The other thing that is the American Nursing Association is working on is it's called, Focus Groups for Nursing in 2040. So the CNO and the CEO have their vision about how nursing is going to look in 2040. And Angela Badeau, she is the CEO. I've had conversations with her personally quite often, and she really is passionate about cannabis nursing and holistic nursing. And why I'm bringing this up is because I've participated in 2 national focus groups. So one was probably earlier in 2025, and then more recently I was in another focus group with other organizations just asking about nursing questions. Some of it was related to cannabis. Others, we were all different specialties that we were representing. So I represented the cannabis nursing, and it was very interesting. But again, it's for the goals on how nursing in 2040 is going to look. And I guess this is a good time for me to bring this up as well. I know a lot of nurses, we are super excited, passionate about having a certification exam. When I met Angela the first time, she asked me, what was my dream? If I could have anything. And I said, well, we did the scope and standards. So how about having a credentialing or certification for cannabis nursing? And she was super excited about that. So whether it be a micro-credentialing, some type of national certification, and the scope and standards right now is written at 3 different levels. I know that we all know this because, we all have reviewed it. So I, like Llewellyn, had said that I think the registered nurse needs to be educated, and if those are the nurses that would most likely, in my opinion, want to be certified. ANA, their focus, in addition to that, is having a certification for the APRN. And so that I find interesting, and they were really, I don't want to say pushing that, but they were really asking me a lot of questions about being, an APRN.
It does make sense, though, that they would be looking at that because there's so many states that include APRNs in the certifying for medical cannabis patients. I know when Ken was writing the law for the U.S. Virgin Islands, he put in there, he was trying to get RNs to be able to certify, and they wouldn't go for it. They did accept the APRN, which was wonderful. Sometimes you have to go for the gusto to get what you you're trying to get anyway.
Right.
But, it's good to hear that they're paying attention to those things. I have a question, though, because in 2018, the National Council of State Boards of Nursing published the National Nursing Guidelines for the care of a patient using cannabis, right? So many nurses are still graduating without any formal education about cannabis. yet they're still taking care of patients that are using cannabis. Why do you think that academia was so slow to, why are they so slow to move to educate in this way, even though we've had these guidelines since 2018?
Coming from academics, and I've been in leadership roles, I have been an associate dean and a director of a nursing program in the Chicagoland. We have the information, but because of and I'm not talking about politics. I'm talking about like the academic politics. I work for a nonprofit, and that's actually how I got interested, or how I got involved with cannabis. I was able to, call the provost, get permission, make some policy changes within that organization. I work now in Florida, I work in a national nursing organization, and it's a little bit more difficult. So to answer your question, I think we definitely have some barriers in the academic institution to implement what NCSBN, what you're talking about, their 6 essential guidelines are. Now in the hospitals, we also need to do the same thing and have champions to even just have like an educational module for new grads and a new grad program, or even nurses that we transfer from one hospital to another. And part of our orientation would be to, have some nursing education for that. But Llewellyn and I, and many, I think a few people here participated in writing a chapter of an educational chapter. My focus, since I've been on leadership and Lou as well, we wrote a chapter on the challenges and the barriers. Exactly your question. Our response to your question is the barriers that we have in academics and hospital settings on providing education in cannabis nursing and competencies, and what could that look like, and how can we change that? And again, education and stigma are huge.
I see in the chat that you put that the NCSBN guidelines are now almost a decade old, and not for nothing, but literally by the end of the year of 2018, they were already out of date. So I get what you're saying about, even though they're out of date, they are, you said here that it still is the most significant regulatory document out there. So I think the information's still good, even though it is a little dated.
I agree wholeheartedly. And actually, the name of our book is Comprehensive Approaches to Cannabis Nursing, and it's published by IGI Global Publications and by Dr. Kathleen Pinto. It's 28 chapters, and many of your members participated as well with CNN, and we're happy to be right there alongside of you. I just helped Dr. Sommers a little bit with that leadership chapter. But I do have a chapter of my own called Cannabis Nursing in New Age. And what it really focuses on is the path forward with ANA and ACNA, the scope and standards, credentialing, and how we vision things moving forward. The whole schedule thing is a conundrum, though. Even though, okay, we're talking about, it's Schedule 3. I'm sorry, it's still stuck in Schedule 1. Okay, at least we're having some dialogue about that now, some serious dialogue and some movement, but it's still in Schedule 1. So honestly, we haven't made much progress other than advancing the conversation, and that will lead to other things. But it's still a real issue right now. So those are the things that I kind of see are barriers for education. I'm hoping this textbook will go a long way. It's a global textbook, and it's got authors all over the world contributing to it. So I'm hoping it'll be a resource that's utilized for curriculum. Now we have this book coming out. We also have the handbook coming out. Well, that's already been out since 2021 by Dr. Kudo. And we have the scope and standards, which also will need updating soon, in addition to the guidelines. So we really have some solid pieces of educational resources. People can no longer say we don't have it. We have it. You just don't know about it. And we've got to provide you access to it.
Yeah, you guys have done such a great job of getting those resources together and out there. I know it hasn't been an easy task, but you've stuck with it. One of the other things too, you were just saying these resources are out there, but nurses don't know about it. People don't know about it. You spoke about that you're adding into this proposal compassionate use piece and pulled from Ryan's Law. And Ryan's Law, it was sad that we had to get to that point, and the reason why we did it is a whole nother story. We'll be talking about that tomorrow with Ryan's father, Jim Bartell, and Ken, who authored the law. But we knew that Ryan's Law was a giant leap for access, for getting cannabis into the healthcare system, right? And so now when these laws pass, nurses have to learn about this stuff. There's now 10 states in the United States that have a Ryan's Law. How do we get nurses to understand that these resources are available for them when they're faced with the fact that now patients not only are using cannabis on their own time, but they're in their facility using cannabis?
I think let's go big, and we're going to partner with the American Nursing Association. They're the ones who recognize the cannabis nursing. And I think 5 million nurses, if we can branch out and spread the word, I think that's a big group of nurses that we'd be able to share that information with. And so we just need to, be consistent, specifically regarding educating CEUs, maybe a free webinar in the beginning, and kind of branching off with that. And then we'll get to credentialing and micro credentialing and educational modules for that.
But to answer your question about moving us forward, in the state of Virginia, our governor just signed a law for compassionate use. Okay. So I think that from a legal point of view and a state's right point of view, when they start writing that legislation and hospitals have to comply with it, like in the state of Virginia, certain patients are allowed to have their medication within the hospital, the nursing home, wherever they're in an institution, let me put it that way. So nurses now have to come up with those policies, and that's where they're really going to need us.
Good stuff. I saw that Marlo Moss, and I don't know, Marlo, if you want to come off of mute and talk to us, but Marlo says that she is in Washington State and that she works for the state government. And that when Ryan's Law got passed, which just happened recently within the last month, that she had to review the bill and prepare herself for the impact. Are you willing to talk to us a little bit about that, Marlo? And what does that look like as you're preparing yourself for impact? Brace for impact. Ryan's Law's here.
Sure, Heather. Thanks. I am excited about this. So very, very excited about it. But I saw the bill come through because I work with the Department of Health and Social Services, and we review the bills that come through that'll impact our programs. And I work as a program manager with nurses that contract with us, and they serve the community in various capacities in the home, in adult family homes. They cross over from skilled nursing. So the reason I'm really interested in this is I know this has been coming, and I think there needs to be voices in the policy. And I'm going to field a lot of questions I already have about, how are we going to do this, and how are we going to make this work operationally, and how are we going to educate on this? And so we see it coming. I have people I know that work for the Cannabis Board, the Enforcement Board. I've been trying to connect at DOH as well. But I'm excited to see the direction, and it's good to hear about all this. I was able to hop on this afternoon and hear about the directions for certification. And I just want to be able to represent it when I get the opportunity and share it with the people who are shaping the code to implement the law. So.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Marlo, for sharing that with us. It's one thing to pass laws. It's another thing to implement laws, right? And I like being on the side of passing laws. It has its own set of challenges, but that implementation is so, so important. We passed Ryan's Law first here in California, the implementation was a little bit slow. It, just like she said, it takes a minute to kind of figure out how this is all going to work. I'm not sure if you're all aware, but there is a nurse-led research article that did come out. I believe it was the Journal of Nurse Oncology, and it was from UCLA, an oncology unit at UCLA, and they wrote how wonderful Ryan's Law is working for their patients. And so I think that as we're moving forward, it was important for the work that I do, which is trying to get this law passed, because now one of the things Wendy knows, the first question that the government officials ask is, well, you did it in California. How's that working out for you? And now we have the research to back the facts that Ryan's Law, nurses can figure this thing out. Literally, that's what this research article says. Look, it's not that big of a deal. Patients administer it to themselves. Nurses, we can handle this. And by the way, the patient satisfaction is incredible. And so, as we're moving forward, trying to make it not simplify, but don't make it more complicated than it needs to be. And I see Marlo nodding her head. The law is pretty straightforward. So if you can just kind of follow that, I know that we have a policy. I know ACA took the policy that Ken wrote, the sample policy. Cannabis Nurses Network has the policy on our website, and it's a sample policy. You can take it, you can frame it, you can shift it and change it, and make it work for your state. So anyway, I just wanted to say thank you, Marlo, for sharing with us. So for nurse educators who were trying to integrate in this cannabis content into their curriculum, but they don't know where to start, what would your advice for them be?
For me, it really depends on how the academic institution is going to want to weave it in. Remember, I'm academia, so that's where my thought process is coming. There's a couple different ways. We could, one, create like a module or a course. It could be like 3 credit hours, 4, whatever the amount of credit hours, and then start off with the basics and have the endocannabinoid system all the way to talking about different uses and side effects, and go the whole gamut and having it in one course. Or another way, which would, I don't know if I'm really leaning towards one, I've always kind of thought of it this way, is taking, because I am in charge of curriculum, being a director, and I'm currently a faculty, but I'm in charge of curriculum, is to weave in cannabis therapeutics and cannabinoids and throughout, like starting off in anatomy class. I mean, I don't know if a lot of us remember that, but the prereqs for nursing school is, anatomy and biology, and just kind of weaving in that throughout the nursing program. And then in each course, I like pediatrics, we could talk about cannabis, CBD, and then, as we go throughout the entire nursing program. And it doesn't make a difference on whether it's an associate degree or baccalaureate degree program. And then just weaving in that way. That's one avenue. And also, my other thing is partnering with NCSBN. And, if the students have stake in it that it's going to be on a test, then they're going to want to learn about it, right? I'm not saying that they don't. And there's a lot of nursing students that, ask me different questions, just in general, their own personal or family experiences to help educate them. But that's not really part of curriculum. And then in the hospital situation, Llewellyn might want to discuss it, but to, have some type of, standardized module that maybe we could put out to at least give what are some of the foundational information that we need. And we just got to keep on educating.
I do like your idea, Dr. Sommers, about integrating it throughout the curriculum, starting with A&P, through pharmacology. Really, it belongs in pharmacology, adult health, pediatrics, etc. But I really feel like until the NCSBN starts putting questions on the exam related to cannabis from a harm reduction point of view and a therapeutic point of view instead of a punitive point of view, that will drive the curriculum. Because until it's tested by the regulatory agencies, It's not going to be addressed in the curriculum. The nursing curriculum is already very full, and the blueprint is quite thick. So they say, oh, well, where do you have room for that? Well, where we have room is we're going to integrate it within all levels of the curriculum, not just have a cannabis nursing class.
And that has to do with the fact that the endocannabinoid system is part of our anatomy and physiology. It is part of pathophysiology. It's part of every piece of what we need to learn, from neurology down to cardiology, down to, as you said, the pharmacology. Because of the endocannabinoid system, it needs to be in there. Even if they're not talking about cannabis, I can see talking about cannabis maybe in the CAM section, complementary and alternative medicines. That's where it should have been this whole time too. But now that it's a Schedule 3, it does need to be in the pharmacology section there, and all of these other FDA approved medications that are already out there. Do you know if any of those things, like the Mirinol and the Epidiolex, are those being talked about in the pharmacology courses, Dr. Sommers?
It's not, this is the other issue. It's not consistent in all nursing programs. In my last 20 years in academics, I've been at 3 institutions. It's really, I don't mean to say unprofessionally, it's a hit or miss off of whether it's in the program or not, and that it's not as strong on the blueprint, which is what Llewellyn's discussing. So it needs to be a little bit more solidified and not just be under under the Schedule 1 medications. I mean, we are changing with that process. Nursing academics we're always behind by a couple of years at least. So we're not going to see the changes for, in nursing students for a while. Hopefully we can start off as registered nurses, and it can trickle down that way instead. But I think that when there's more bite and more, like the exam will really help. And then we didn't even talk about, so what about ATI? Or HESI, all these other educational platforms that will help out. And I have not really apologizing for speaking about nursing students, but they are our future. And so we need to start there too. And at the same time, educate registered nurses that those of us who are working in the field in practice.
Absolutely. So you brought up nursing students. They are the future nurses that will be caring for all of us, really. If you could leave the next generation of nurses, cannabis nurses, with one message of encouragement, what would that message be?
My first message is to listen to your patient and be open-minded, and we need to be not judgmental. You need to listen to your patient with an open mind and have trust. That's my huge takeaway. If you don't have that, your patient is not going to share what medications that they're taking or anything about that's a general nursing. So I'm very passionate about nursing students and an advocate of nursing students.
Luckily, this younger group of students, they're already on it. Okay. And so we don't really have to change their mind too much. They're already looking at it in a more positive light than we were taught to look at it. And it's not in the closet for them. So I think that there is a lot of hope for the future. And that's what I would hang on to is this new youthful generation that is doing things way differently than have been done in the past. COVID caused a paradigm shift with a lot of these things. And I really feel like the way the student learns changed tremendously during COVID. And the way we educate them has changed. And they're finding information out there on their own without just utilizing their nursing curriculum. So I think that there's a lot of hope out there. That's what I would give them.
The other thing that I wanted to point out is the NCSBN, of course, that's a great foundation, but I do want to highlight the Cannabis Nursing Scope and Standards of Practice, because that is extremely detailed in the 18 standards, and then each standard has a competency, and nobody should ever not read that book and be like, I don't understand what a cannabis nurse does, because it is written very clearly on all the competencies. In addition to that, the Scope and Standards of Practice has additional information, like talking about cannabis and DOT workers, and cannabis and nursing students, and cannabis and military, and additional resources.
It's a great book. Thank you for putting in the work and effort to making that happen. And then not only that, but going around on the book tour and trying to let folks know that this exists, that this information is out here. It's just wonderful. I would also, I guess we're getting ready to wrap up here, so I would love to ask any last thoughts that you have that you'd like to impart on us before we close up this evening.
I think all of us need to continue advocating and education to everybody, nursing, community, I don't know, your neighbor next door. That's my one takeaway. And then my second takeaway is, if you have the opportunity to join the American Nursing Association's organization, they are nurses' voice. So when we want to make these policy changes, everything that we spoke about today, they will be able to help us move this forward.
Yes, thank you so much for having us, Heather. It was a real pleasure. It was a pleasure to see all of you and talk about something we're really passionate about, and appreciate your support in our efforts.
Tonight's conversation reminds us that education is never just about information. It's about empowerment. When nurses are educated, patients are safer. Conversations become more honest. Care becomes more compassionate. And healthcare begins to reflect the realities people are already living every day. The future of nursing education is about adding cannabis and endocannabinoid system information into textbooks, but it's also about teaching nurses how to think critically, care holistically, advocate courageously, and remain open to emerging science and evolving patient needs. To everyone here tonight, you are part of this shift. Your willingness to learn and engage in these conversations matters more than you know. The next generation of nurses are already watching how we lead. And together, we have the opportunity to build a future where nurses are informed, prepared, compassionate, and truly equipped for modern healthcare. Thank you all for being part of this moment and this forward movement.